I promise it will always guide you home.
I don't need a token to remember you.
The rescued child. The desert wind moved like a restless spirit across the wide Nevada plains, carrying dust and the scent of distant rain. Liam Vance rode slowly along the dry riverbed, his horse weary from a long day of mending fences and checking cattle. The sky was still bruised from the storm that had passed the night before, leaving broken branches and silence in its wake. That was when he saw her, a small figure curled against the cracked earth as if trying to disappear into it. At first he thought she might already be gone, but then she moved. She was a child, no more than 10. Her dark braids were tangled with sand, her dress torn at the hem, and her small hands were scraped and trembling. When she noticed him, her eyes widened with raw fear. She tried to crawl away, whispering something in her native tongue. Liam recognized the beaded necklace around her neck and the faint markings stitched into her clothing. Comanche. Tension between settlers and the Comanche had been thick for years. Helping her could bring questions, suspicion, even danger. For a long moment, Liam remained still in the saddle, knowing that one decision could change everything. Then he slowly dismounted, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure she understood the words. She flinched when he stepped closer, but exhaustion had stolen her strength. Gently, carefully, he removed his coat and wrapped it around her thin shoulders. She was burning with fever. Without another thought, he lifted her into his arms and carried her to his horse. At the ranch, he placed her in the small spare room beside the kitchen. He cleaned her wounds, left water within reach, and gave her space. For days, she barely spoke. She would sit by the window, staring at the endless horizon as if waiting for someone who would never return. One night, as she slept restlessly, she whispered a name through trembling lips. Kaya. That was how he learned who she was. Weeks passed. She began to eat more. The fear in her eyes softened into watchfulness. One quiet morning, Liam found a small woven bracelet beside his coffee cup, delicate, carefully made. It was her first gift, and the first time she allowed herself to smile at him. He didn't know then how deeply that smile would stay with him long after she was gone. The return 10 years had passed. Yet Liam Vance could still remember the small girl with frightened eyes as clearly as if it were yesterday. Time had carved deeper lines into his face and streaked silver through his hair, but the memory of Kaya had never faded. The ranch had grown quieter over the years. He worked hard, spoke little, and kept to himself. In the top drawer of his bedside table, wrapped carefully in cloth, lay the woven bracelet she had left behind. Some nights he would take it out, turning it over in his rough hands, wondering where she had gone and whether she had survived. The desert evening was calm when she returned. The sky burned orange and crimson as the sun sank low, painting long shadows across the land. Liam stood near the fence line when he heard approaching hoofbeats. He expected a neighbor or a traveler seeking water. Instead, he saw a lone rider moving with steady confidence toward his gate. The rider dismounted smoothly. It was a woman. She stood tall, her posture strong, her long dark hair flowing freely down her back. Her clothing blended two worlds, traditional Comanche beadwork carefully stitched into modern riding attire. There was nothing fragile about her now. She carried herself with quiet power. Liam felt something tighten in his chest when she lifted her face. Those eyes. Breath caught. Kaya? A small smile touched her lips. It wasn't the shy, uncertain smile of a rescued child. It was the confident smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out stronger. "I'm the Comanche girl you saved years ago," she said gently. "And I've returned." The world seemed to narrow around them. Liam removed his hat slowly, disbelief and emotion battling in his expression. "You disappeared," he said quietly. "I thought I didn't know what to think." "I had to leave," she replied. "My people found me. They brought me home. I needed to remember who I was." She reached into her saddlebag and pulled out something familiar, the matching woven bracelet to the one he kept hidden away. She held it between them, a bridge across 10 years of silence. "I promised myself I would return," she said softly. "Not as a child you rescued, but as a woman who chooses her own path." The desert wind stirred gently around them. "And I have come back," she finished, her gaze never leaving his, "because I choose you." A divided world news of Kaya's return spread through the town faster than wildfire on dry grass. By the next morning, whispers followed Liam wherever he went. Men paused mid-con conversation when he stepped into the general store. Women standing near the well lowered their voices, but did not lower their stares. Some called her brave, others called her trouble. A few used words far less kind. The old wounds between settlers and the Comanche had never fully healed, and her presence stirred fears people had buried but never forgotten. Kaya noticed the tension, but she did not shrink from it. She rode beside Liam into town with her head high, her expression calm. Her clothing reflected both her heritage and her independence, and she wore it proudly. Children stared at her beadwork with curiosity while their parents pulled them closer. She met every gaze steadily, neither challenging nor apologizing. She had not returned to beg for acceptance. She had returned because her heart had chosen its path. Among her own people, her decision had also sparked debate. She had spent years rebuilding herself within her tribe, learning their language deeply, studying their traditions, and training under an elder healer who saw potential in her steady hands and compassionate spirit. She had earned respect through dedication and resilience. Some elders understood her choice, believing unity could bring peace. Others feared that loving a cowboy would weaken her ties to her roots. Liam felt the weight of both worlds pressing against him. He had lived most of his life guided by simple codes. Protect what is yours, stand by your word, and fear no man. But loving Kaya was more complicated than facing down a storm or defending cattle from rustlers. It meant challenging prejudice, risking reputation, and standing firm when others questioned his judgment. He cared for her deeply, more deeply than he had allowed himself to admit. But he worried about the life she would have beside him. One evening, tension finally reached his ranch. A small group of men rode up, their faces tight with concern disguised as authority. They warned him that bringing her into town would stir conflict. They suggested he send her away before matters worsened. Liam's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Kaya stepped forward. Her voice was calm yet unshakable. She spoke of peace, of gratitude, of choice. She reminded them that kindness had once crossed a dangerous line when Liam saved her life. That kindness, she said, was not weakness, but strength. Her courage disarmed them more effectively than any weapon. Later that night, under a sky thick with stars, Liam turned to her and asked if she was certain about facing such resistance. She took his hand without hesitation and told him love was never meant to be easy, but it was always worth fighting for. The ceremony. It was quiet and the world felt new. It was Kaya's idea to hold the ceremony in the open land between the town and her tribal home, a place untouched by fences or boundaries. She said it felt right to stand where neither world claimed full ownership, where the sky stretched wide enough to hold them both. Liam agreed without hesitation. If they were to begin a life together, it would not belong to one side or the other. It would belong to them. Word spread despite their desire for simplicity. At dawn, small groups gathered at a respectful distance. A few townsfolk came, including the old storekeeper who had known Liam for years and a young couple who believed in new beginnings. From Kaya's tribe came elders, family friends, and the healer who had trained her. There was tension in the air, but it was softer now, mixed with curiosity and cautious hope. Kaya walked toward Liam as the first light touched the horizon. She wore a simple white dress, modest and flowing, but over it rested intricate Comanche beadwork she had crafted herself. The patterns told a story of survival, gratitude, and unity. Her long, dark hair was braided neatly, woven with small turquoise stones that caught the rising sun. She looked neither like a settler bride nor solely like a tribal daughter. She looked like herself. Liam stood waiting with his hat pressed against his chest, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in a gunfight or cattle drive. He had faced storms, droughts, and loss, but nothing had prepared him for the vulnerability of this moment. When she reached him, their eyes met, and everything else seemed to fade. An elder from her tribe spoke first, offering blessings in her native tongue, asking the earth and sky to witness their promise. Liam repeated simple vows in his steady voice, promising protection, respect, and partnership. Kaya's vows were equally strong. She spoke of choice, not obligation, of standing beside him as an equal, not a debt repaid. As the sun rose fully bathing the desert in gold, Liam placed a ring on her finger. Kaya tied a small woven cord around his wrist, symbolizing unity in her tradition. The wind stirred gently around them, warm and steady, as if approving of the union. When they finally stood hand in hand as husband and wife, the invisible line between two worlds felt thinner. They were no longer divided by fear or history. They were bound by courage, forgiveness, and a love strong enough to build something entirely new. If you enjoyed this story, please share, like, and subscribe.
The mesas stood like judges then, watching the dust trail rise, a slip of a thing in the sagebrush, under those wide open skies. Just a shadow seeking water, and a heart with too much room. I didn't know that kindness was a seed about to bloom. 10 summers turned to timber, 10 winters turned to stone. I carried her memory like a compass, walking the range alone. Now the sun is bleeding orange on the peaks where the eagles fly, and the girl that I once sheltered to find the salt and the sea, she wasn't just a child back then, she was my destiny. She was my destiny. The gold is in her necklace, and the wisdom's in her face. She's wearing the years like a garment, with a quiet certain grace. The crowd is just a blur of denim and the dust of many miles, but they see the map of heaven in the way our spirits smile. Two worlds finally folding like the dawn across the floor. I don't have to wander out there, I don't have to look no more. Time is a desert, long and dry, but love is the river that won't pass us by. 10 years, just a blink in the eye of the canyon. Now the sun is bleeding orange on the peaks where the eagles fly, and the girl that I once sheltered to find the salt and the sea, she wasn't just a child back then, she was my destiny. She was my destiny. Yeah, she was always my destiny. Dust in the canyon will get gone.